I'd like to thank Antony Daniel to have accepted to join us today to present a bit the situation of the control of the emerald ash borer in Montreal and other things, I believe. Antony, you will cover a lot of things. Just to tell you that Antony has been, I'm not sure exactly how you call this in English, but you're like an advisor for the planification for the city. You've been at this job for the last 12 years. You correct me? How do you?
Not the last 12 years. I began in 2009 as a Conseiller, planning advisor, could we say?
Right, right. And he looks young, but actually he has done a lot of things. You know, he actually was even owner of some companies in the early days, looking at very early on at how to fight problems in a kind of integrated way. He's been a biologist at the Jardin Botanique. He's done actually some education in the Vieux Port de Montréal. What do I have here? Actually, yeah, and you've been working as a research, I guess, not coordinator, but a researcher for the city of Montreal for a few years. But maybe one of his most important achievements in life was that he had the chance to be one of my students when he did his bachelor at UQAM, and he's a product of UQAM. And that was actually quite a long time ago. I think we talked before, and I think it was in 1995 or 96, so a few years ago. And I don't really remember even what I was teaching, but I hope that you had good memories of it.
I do.
I'll let you give your presentation. So you have quite a bit of time. And maybe I would like to ask you if you would like us to ask questions as you speak, or if you want us to wait at the end, and then we will ask our question. We want it to be a bit interactive.
Yeah, I think people can ask questions whenever they want during the presentation. That'd be fine.
Perfect. So thank you.
Excellent. So I will share my screen with you guys, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. As Christian said, was one of his students who actually was successful. So today I've been asked to share with you the experience of Montreal with emerald ash borer. You probably know that we're fighting emerald ash borer impact for a couple of years now. But what people may not know is that we still have 50,000 ash trees which are treated on a 2-year program. So many of the city around Montreal, on South Shore or North Shore of Montreal, doesn't have no more ash trees. All the ash trees around Montreal are dead or close to be dead. So in Montreal, we still have a lot of ash trees because we put a strategy in place very early on before EAB was there. So that's probably the explanation why we came out successful in fighting the impacts on our urban forest. So today I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to expose to you the challenge we had at first for before EAB arrived. We knew that it will be a challenge because we had a lot of ash trees. How we prepare to EAB arrival and the strategy that we've used, which is still in place actually to fight the impact it has on our urban forest. And I'm going to give you an update on the infestation situation and maybe other projects that we have to actually improve our urban forest. So for those of you who are not familiar with Montreal, Montreal is an island, of course, surrounded by the St. Lawrence River. Our canopy cover, the last time it was measured, it was 19.4%. We did another measure in 2019. We're still waiting for the result to be treated. At the end of the year, probably we'll get another measure of our canopy cover. We hope it's going to increase. But the thing is, We've been measuring it 3 times since 2007. And the canopy cover, we maintain it even if we have to remove a lot of ash trees on our territory. So the good news is that the effort that we've made to fight emerald ash borer and to plant tree probably pays off. And our canopy cover is still good at the time that we're talking. So one thing about Montreal is most people think the city of Montreal occupies the whole island of Montreal, which is not the case. We share the island with 15 other cities, which make it 35 stakeholders for the island. It's kind of, I don't know how to call this in English, but in French we call agglomération de Montréal. So we have to speak to each other if we want to fight emerald ash borer. This was one of the challenges that we have to face. I'm going to talk about it maybe later. We have 19 boroughs, which each one a mayor and a council, and the central city, which make it 20 stakeholders only for Montreal. So we had at the beginning of the fight against emerald ash borer, 20% of ash tree in our forest, street tree mainly. We even had a borough that has more than 20%, which was close to 42% ash tree. So the EB challenge that Montreal were facing before knowing EB was about to come is that we had 80,000 ash trees in local park and streets. One tree over 5 street trees were ash, and 9 borough. We had a borough which has 44%, so it was a lot of ash tree. And we figured out in 2016 that we had 48,000 private ash tree also on our territory. We had a lot of large park which were filled with ash trees. All those trees could be lost in 10 to 15 years. We estimated that the loss could be as big as 3% canopy loss for Montreal. And it's probably the case. With it is not the case right now, but it could have been the case. I mean, and we have also, as many cities in Canada are facing buckthorn invasion and many wooded area, which were waiting for the ash tree to die to take the place. So we have plenty of challenge in Montreal to think about. So the challenge that we were facing also is that you probably come across this one. It's a paper that came out in 2013, Donovan et al. It was showing that in the United States, in a community that lost their ash tree, they linked 21,000 premature human death linked to the loss of ash trees. So we use all those arguments actually to convince our political representative to give us money to make a plan way before EEB arrived. So this is another example here how it could affect Montreal. In Montreal, we had a lot of ash trees, but we also had a lot of streets which were monoculture of ash trees, such as this one. So all the trees that you can see on that picture are ash trees. Imagine if they're gone, it's not the same landscape no more. We have a loss of ecological services and everything. So we had a lot at stakes, I would say, and we had to prepare for this. But how do you prepare for the arrival of emerald ash borer? I remember back then I was in front of a blank sheet trying to solve how to start with how to prepare for the EB arrival. So at this time, I remember I asked an expert, which was my son. He was 3 years old, and he drew me that nice nice picture of what should I do. As you can see here, we lost control of EAB. Here is a main infestation, and we kept a bit of canopy around here. I guess the turtle, if it was for the speed of the process. So basically what we did, we gather information. We went to see people that knew EAB already. This is a workshop that took place in Toronto, where they had EAB way before us. I guess it's in 2008 that they had EAB. And 2008, we had also EAB in Quebec and Carignan, a city which is 25 kilometers south of Montreal. So we knew it was coming to Montreal very soon. So we went there to get to know EAB, what to expect. And we make like modelization to try to figure out what could be the pattern of ash mortality around Montreal, how much time it could take with all the information that we had. We also make a lot of presentation in order to raise awareness among our political representative, administrative representative, to make sure once it's going to be there, we're going to get the money to fight it and to put an action plan in place. So probably the preparation for the arrival of EAB was not a walk in the park, because it took a lot of effort. And sometimes we did a lot of presentation with nobody in the audience, because we were talking about a problem that were not there. It's not always easy to prepare for a problem which is not there in the city. In city, we only work with current problems, current issues. So what we did in the beginning in 2009, when I started to actually prepare for EAB, I was alone. I would say now we are almost 30 people working on EAB during the summer with the, how do you say stagiaire in English?
Interns.
Interns. With the interns, we're about 30 people, but usually we are around 20 people that work full-time on EAB. So what we did in the beginning, I put like a grid of prism trap, sticky prism trap, such as this one, with Z3-hexanol as an attractant. And we finally found our first infestation tree around the commercial port of Montreal, the point that you see there. And it was in July 2011. So at the beginning of the infestation, we had no idea how much it was spread to our territory, the extent at which we could expect to find EAB. So what we did, we asked for money and we put the plan in place. And we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we took all the information that was already available. We went to see the guru of EAB and the States and the United States, Deborah McCullough, Therese Paulin. And we actually tried to figure out how much time it could take to lose our ash trees. So this is actually the dead curve that you probably seen already. It shows the exponential mortality of ash tree within the first radius of 2.5 kilometers. So what we wanted to do is to flatten the curve. I guess you heard about flattening curves. With COVID, we are talking about that all the time in the media. So it's not different from COVID. We wanted to flatten the curve to decrease the money, the impact it will have on our urban forest. We estimated if we do nothing, the do nothing scenario could cost us 140 million just for the tree removal and replacement, without even considering the ecological services loss that those trees are offering to Montreal each year. And basically, this is where we are in 2020. Last year, we spent, since the beginning, almost 30 million for ash tree treatment, removal, and replacement of those that we can not treat. And we didn't get the green curve, but still, we still have 50,000 ash trees which are treated each 2 years. So basically, we put the SLAM strategy on, strategy which means slow ash mortality, which has been developed by two state university, Michigan State University and Ohio State University, USDA, and US Forest Department. So we took the strategy, which is essentially a integrated pest management strategy, which consists of using all the method, the technique that could be useful to fight EAB, to detect it, to lower the impact it could have on our urban forests. So basically, the strategy was about tree inventory. Of course, we didn't have all ash tree in our inventory. We have some ash tree that were in local park that were not in an inventory. We did also a lot of survey with the technique which has been developed by Canadian Forest Services, which is the branch sampling method, which consists in removing the bark from 2 branches for each ash trees and verifying the presence of larvae gallery underneath the bark. This technique was pretty efficient. It could detect 75% of time EAB when it was in a tree. So we use that sampling method in order to survey our forest to get to know what was the extent of the infestation and where we had to put more effort at the beginning. So after which we did injection. I'm going to talk to this in detail and the other slide. We did the strategic removal, ashwood movement control, of course, because it was identified as the #1 vector of EAB spread. So we did also adopted a bylaw and subsidy program to help citizens to do the same thing that we were doing. Of course, the strategy could not have been successful if it was not applied on private ash tree also. And we did a lot of research partnership with Canadian Forest Service, with CFIA, and we're still working on a project, a biological control project with the fungi Beauvaria bassiana. A lot of communication effort. So I'm going to speak to all those in detail. So in 2016, we had about 80,000 street and local park ash trees. And we had about 48,000 private ash tree. So it was the first year that we could get to know exactly the amount of ash tree we had on private land. So we did a lot of branch sampling to get to know where EAB was. This is the grid that we've been using for a couple of years between, I would say, 2012 to 2017. We've been sampling between 2,000 and 3,000 ash trees each year to get to know how the infestation of EAB was evolving on our territory and which were the hot places where we should put more money to slow the spread and slow the ash mortality. So it's like having little fire that are starting everywhere in the city. We're trying to extinguish them as fast as we can in order to gain time over EAB and over ash mortality. So basically what we were doing, once we find an ash tree that were infested, we were checking all the tree around it, the private one, the park one, the street one. All those that could be treated were treated with triazine, which was pretty efficient. Since we use it, we had good result with it. Some city we know did not have successful result with it. Sometimes it's probably because they were not early enough in the process. You know, it's a preventive pesticide, I would say, that work best if the tissue of the tree are not affected by the larvae underneath the bark. So all the trees that were not actually qualifying to be treated, we were removing them and replacing them. So each year, the sampling that we were making were enabling us to get the area where we should put our effort, and we make it mandatory for the citizen to do the same thing on their private ash tree when they were making part of those high infestation risk zone. I'm going to speak to that later, but we've been adopting also subsidy to help them to face the cost of the intervention that were associated to fight EAB, just like we did on public ash trees. So at the beginning, you see we had very few ash trees that were detected positive with emerald ash borer, and with time we were getting more and more ash tree infested. But in 2017, we decided to stop sampling because the most of the territory of Montreal were covered by infestation high-risk zone. So we decided to that every ash tree that were on the territory of Montreal has the potential to be infested. So we decided to treat each ash tree as it was potentially infested by EAB. So we stop at this time and make it mandatory to treat all ash trees and urban area. So on citizen land, on public land, which are not wooded, we're treating the ash that were actually qualifying for treatment and removing the other. At the beginning, we had a lot of ash tree removal to do. So we tried to remove the infested ash tree in this logical sequence, which actually enable us to reduce the population of emerald ash borer. So we were removing the highly infested, poor condition ash tree first. And this was going to the low infested, good condition tree. If we could not treat them, we were removing them at the end. So this enabled us to win time over the infestation because we knew that the poor condition tree were really make the reproduction of emerald ash borer faster than the other tree. You know, they had no defense, and the emerald ash borer could reproduce very fast on those trees. And we also control the ash tree disposal and movement, even when it was on private land. So people had to get rid of their wood. They could not use it as firewood, for instance. So since then, our bylaw get modified a couple of times. Today, it's not mandatory to control the disposal of ash wood, but you still cannot keep it as firewood. You have to, you can have the choice to transform it or to get rid of it in a way that it's going to destroy EAB. So we adopted, as I said earlier, bylaws and subsidy program. We still have our bylaw that make it mandatory to treat LT ash tree and to remove the ash tree that should die back and which are dead. And we also have a subsidy for tree treatment. It's free for the citizen. The city take in charge all the treatment of ash trees, even on private property. So the only thing the citizen has to do is to register online on our website to give us permission to treat their tree. We have a tree removal and replacement subsidy also, which cover $5 per centimeter of tree which has been removed and replaced. So we make it mandatory for people to replace their tree if the space is available when the ash tree has to come down. And we even offer another subsidy that offer a free of charge tree planted for a citizen if they want. So they don't have to do the replacement themselves. They can if they want. But if they want to, no trouble, they just ask the city to replace it. And we're replacing the tree freely. We did a lot of research partnership. As I mentioned earlier, we had biological control program with USDA and Natural Resource Canada, the Canadian Forest Service. So we did release 2 species of parasitoid in Montreal and wooded area. One of them we had the confirmation that it's successful. It's spreading. It's Tetrasticus planification, and we have also Obius agreli, which is egg parasitoid. We don't have confirmation for this one that is established, but we hope soon to have this confirmation. We did a lot of research with Canadian Forest Service for the development, for instance, of the synthetic pheromone lactone, which is used in some sticky trap, mostly in places where EAB has not been detected yet, because it makes it a bit costlier to use the attractant, the lactone, to detect EAB. For Montreal, there were no interest in using this attractant because we already knew that EAB was there and we were not sampling anymore. But we still have another project with a company which is called GDG Environnement, which kind of have an agreement with Canadian Forest Department to share to commercialize the how do we say that, the trap which is used with the Bovaria bassiana fungi isolate that Canadian Forest Department detected in Sarnia, I guess, which is pretty effective against EAB. So we're still making research on that project in order to have another tool to fight emerald ash borer, another tool which could be less invasive than the injection that we're doing with triazine on ash tree. Because as you probably know, these injury that we're making to tree, we don't know how much time the tree can take them and stay healthy. So we're trying to find other method to keep our ash tree safe, and we still have to remove some of them each year. This is a picture of the treatment that we've been doing. I don't have 2020 because it not has been made public yet, so I cannot give you the data of 2020. We are in electoral year this year, so it's kind of funky. We cannot give all the information. The political representative want to keep it for themselves. So I guess it's going to come out in September with the result that we had in 2020. But it gives you an idea of the treatment that we did. So we've been treating more and more tree over time, but we've been removing a couple of those also. Here you have the removal that we did since 2 years, mostly in urban woodland that we have, because we have another strategy and wooded land. We are not treating in those area, so we have a lot of ash tree that actually died, and last couple of years, and we are mostly removing the tree to ensure the security of the trails and the borders. I'm going to show you a picture in a few minutes. But as you can see, we're decreasing the number of ash tree which are removed on urban area, which is the good news. We only kept the better ones, the healthier ones, so we have a pretty good shape ash tree still remaining in Montreal. This is the strategy that we're applying in the wooded area. As you can see on that picture, this is the trail that cross one of the large park that we have. So basically what we did is remove all the ash tree that were dying, which within a 25-meter perimeter each side of the trails and the border of the park. That makes a lot of ash tree. We have about, we started in 2018 to remove about, we had 40,000 which are planned to be removed, and we did probably more of half has been made already, but we still have a couple of thousand of ash tree to remove still. Of course, all the ash tree which are dying in the center of the woodlot area, we didn't remove them. We just let them go and fall by themselves. So it was really to ensure the security of the users of the park. But we did try to make that tree removal an opportunity by increasing the wood utilization that we were doing. So in 2018, we did 20,000 PMP. So we did planks with a couple of ash trees, not all of them, but we did more planks over and over. And this year we're gonna have a nice record of planks with all the removal that we did. But some of the ash tree cannot be turned in planks, so they are put in chips. But the better use that we've made with our ash trees was to try a different utilization, such as park bench. The recovering of inside the chalet and Parc du Montreal. So we're doing a lot of furniture with the ash tree that has been removed with the plank, which are produced each year. Of course, we are planting a lot of trees. As you may know, we have the objective of increasing our canopy cover of 5% until 2025. So we're going to see where we are with the measure that we did in 2019. But each year we plant a lot of trees. For 2019, we had 90,000 trees since 2012, which has been added to our inventory. So we are planning to plant more and more trees over time. We have a new department which is called Bureau de la Transition Écologique. It's like a ecologic transition bureau. They put another objective for the administration is to plant 500,000 new trees between 2021 and 2030. So we have 500,000 new trees to plant. So the administration is very taking the effort seriously to increase our forest and get the benefit out of the forest that we have. We did a lot of communication effort in order to get the people to understand what we were doing and do the same thing under private ash tree. So we did public information session, radio campaign, web banner, publicity. We given flyers, poster. We did a lot of consultation with the stakeholder around Montreal, also to get all people in the same direction, to get sure that the effort we're doing, because we're spending millions to fight EAB, so we wanted to get the best out of the worst for EAB. One example that we did with the participation of Habitat, which was Ecotourism at this time, is to create these like I would say etiquette stickers on the tree to show the value of the ecological services those trees were giving. So we made two kinds of poster. One that were big, to put on big tree and to show all the services that these tree has given to their community since their plantation. And we have also small poster that we're putting on a small tree to give an example of what the tree will be given in 40 years if it survives, what kind of what is the value of all the services that this tree will have give. Of course, all the services that the tree gave are not there because we just put it the easiest one to calculate. There's so much services the tree are providing, but we used a lot of information that we had on that to share with people. For instance, you probably came across, there's a study that showed the NOAC et al. 2018 that each year the tree of Montreal give for about 32 million in health service to avoid premature death in Montreal and to avoid people from getting sick from the quality of the air. So this is one example of the information that we're sharing with the citizen to let them know the importance of urban tree in our forest. So our main goal in 2021 is continuing securing the woodland area, replacing all the removed street and park ash tree, carry on helping private owners to remove their tree or treat them if they are healthy, continue to participate in EAB control research, increase our wood utilization. For wood utilization, we have a big project which is slowly getting bigger. We want to have in Montreal a facility to actually transform all the wood, not only the ash tree wood, but all the tree which will be removed will be actually transformed in plank or other polarization product when it's going to be in place. So it's starting to become very interesting, this project. And of course, we continue to raise awareness among our citizens for the value of the forest. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Merci beaucoup, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. A very, very good overview of the effort to save ash trees. And I'm sure we have lots of questions, but I would like to maybe to start with the first questions. Do you believe that there will be ash trees left in Montreal in 20 years?
I believe there will be. The question is, where will they be? I'm pretty sure we're going to have still ash trees in the woodland area, just like we have elm still. They're going to be slowly attacked by emerald ash borer, but we never know. Maybe with the parasitoid, we could have changed because we're studying the possibility of releasing another species of parasitoid that could actually fill the gaps for the large ash trees, because actually the species of parasitoid that we release cannot reach EAB when they are on large ash trees. But in the urban area, that's a good question. If we are able to find another tool to fight emerald ash borer, it will probably be the case, I would say, because we are already seeing that the pressure is lowering down on ash tree that remains. So I would guess that the population of EAB will crash eventually when there will be no more ash tree that are not treated. So maybe hopefully we could space the treatment of ash tree maybe once over 3 years possibly. And if we have other tools, we probably add other ash trees. And there's plenty of research going on right now in order to try to develop resistant ash trees that could actually eventually be planted again in cities, just like the same research went on elm, Dutch elm disease. We know that we have already clones of American elm that can resist Dutch elm disease. So maybe in the future we'll see elm and ash trees again.
Benoit, will you be regulating the question period like you did last time?
Sure. Yeah, I thought you were taking that role since you.
No. I don't want to take the role from you, Benoit.
Oh, no worries, Christian. Anybody else have a question for Anthony?
I have a question also similar to Christian, but how many years can we treat ash?
We don't have this information, but of course we have some of the information we can gather on, for example, on the maple tree, which are used to get maple syrup. But I would say probably it's less injury that we make to the maple. But for the maple, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian. It's about 25 years of that we can have the maple syrup from the oil that we made in maple. So we would guess ash tree are pretty resistant tree, but they cannot take it over a long period of year. So it's difficult to say. I don't have the answer for that, but I would guess that one day we're gonna have to slow the rate at which we make those injuries if we want the tree to survive, because we had lost a couple of them probably because of the injury made by the injection.
Okay. Thanks.
We have another question.
Yes.
Let's go with Françoise.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. That was a really great presentation. You made a really potent point that Montreal, in the case of EAB, Montreal really hit the ground running in terms of response to this epidemic. And I wonder if you could speak to how useful it was to benefit from the experience of municipalities that had already gone through this, and whether there was any piece of information that you didn't have that you wish you'd had, or that we might think about collecting in the future when the next one of these hits.
Yeah, I would say the chance that we had in Montreal is that it's Ontario first. So the city of Ontario didn't have the same chance that we had. I would say Windsor, for instance, they could not do nothing. They just look at the train and it passed, and they lost all their ash trees. Toronto was in the middle. So Toronto has kept a couple of their ash trees and Sandy. And I would say Montreal, we had the chance to see it coming. So this was the chance that we had. But since that, we were trying to make like a cell of, surveying all the potential pests that could arrive in Montreal. For instance, this summer, all the city around Canada and the States also had the gypsy moth. We had a lot of questions of the public on that. So this winter, we're probably gonna gather eggs, gonna verify if it could be a good thing to make something next year to avoid the defoliation that we had this summer. But we're surveying also other pests such as longhorn beetle that could arrive anytime in Montreal. So I would say probably the information that the lesson to take from what we've learned from EAB is to start very early in the process, trying to figure out what's coming and raise awareness before it arrived. I remember doing presentation to almost nobody, but once EAB was detected first in Montreal, it was pretty easy to get money. I was alone in the beginning, as I said, and now we have like 4 million per year budget to fight EAB. At the beginning, we could not even get the $30,000 just to make a plan in place, So, so I would say the lesson is probably to try to get all the problem the earlier that we can.
Thanks.
I hope
Thank
that's
you.
your question. Yes.
I remember Sandy, you seem to have a question.
Yeah, of course I have lots of questions, but I wanted to let students and postdocs jump in there. We did see in Toronto, and I was having a side conversation with our hosts at the time, but the students will have seen the EAB discussion and treatments. And I guess I remember being there in 2011, 2012, 2013, Antony, when you guys were sort of just starting to get your head around grappling with this and looking for any information you could get from us in Toronto. And what strikes me, a wonderful overview, thank you. And it's the, I would say it was the management program that we could have only dreamt of. And even on the side discussions I had today while we were doing the tours, you know, Toronto thinks they did a great job, but I think it would pale in comparison to what you guys, like what you've described here. And I guess somewhat so my question is somewhat along the lines of Francoise, is that what did you do wrong? Did you do anything wrong? Like, you know, I look at it and say, this is a template that should be used. It's what we tried to get Toronto into, but again, because it was, even then it was in the middle, it was already almost too late for it to do what you were able to do. Is there anything you missed that you wish you could have done?
Difficult to say. I would guess that, you know, with the vulnerability of Montreal to AB, probably what we did wrong in Montreal is probably what most cities did wrong is to plant too much ash tree, you know.
Yeah, an old problem, yes. Yeah.
Because we did the same mistake. We just replaced elm tree with ash tree, you know, because they were growing fast, they were not costly to produce. They were the tree of all condition in the city. They were the perfect tree, champion tree, you know, in urban area. So what we're trying to do now is to balance our forest, you know, with all the tools and the knowledge provided by university. For example, the diversity, how do you call it? The
functional diversity approach.
Exactly. So we're trying to get those into our practice in order to improve the resilience of our forests. So probably before AB arrived, we were not as under emergency to do it. So what probably we did, we continue to plant ash trees still. So before AB was there, you know, we were still in the old pattern of doing things. And now we're trying to get the best out of it and try to increase the resilience of our forest to such problem in the future.
But so and I'll finish with this. Some people have heard me say, I don't know on this group, but one of the best things that ever happened for urban forestry was emerald ash borer. And I wondered if you would agree on that, because when I look, every city that I see that has had EAB has a huge jump in their budget. So financially, there's a huge awareness. And what you're just describing now, there's a real thinking about what that forest should be rather than let's just fill in the hole.
Yes,
right?
Totally agree. There are a lot of cities in Quebec province that have no forest department, you know. And once EAB hits, remember Gatineau, for instance, which is close from Ottawa, they had nothing, you know, it was their public work that were doing the job, you know. So now they have a forest engineer working full-time on their forest. So there's plenty of cities like this that didn't get to know the importance of the tree before EAB. So of course, I totally agree.
Now we can actually manage our urban forests.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony. That's great.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks, Sandy. Anyone else have a question for Anthony? Hopefully from the student, Matt.
Yeah, I'm curious because I haven't been following it that close, but what the idea or plans or hopes are for resilient varieties and that idea of, you know, sort of the research and the search for some resilience within the population, and whether or not we're, you know, hoping to hold on to some of those woodland areas with fingers crossed that something in there has some genetic resistance, and who's looking at that and whether, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the only thing we didn't look up front is the genetic diversity. we're working a lot on species diversity and variety, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm always forgetting the word, Christian. L'autre diversité, c'est quoi déjà?
Functional diversity.
Functional diversity. I'm searching the word in English. So we did a lot, you know, we have a nursery in Montreal. So we're pretty well, you know, going on that point, I would say. The only thing we didn't face is genetic diversity, which is a good problem to, you know, it sounds easy, but it's not easy to, you know, get to know the diversity. But with the tools that are developing, maybe we'll be more able to assess this easier in the future, and it will be easier also to increase that diversity over time with new practice which are developing. Actually, our nursery is trying to increase that, but we're just beginning to do it. I don't know if it answered your question. I'm not sure I got the question right. So
Yeah, I mean that's along the line. I guess I'm just curious as to whether or not we are looking for the, you know, that specific genetic mutant out there that shows some resilience, and hopefully when we'll clone it, we'll just steal that genetic and send it on.
Is there a tree like maybe the elm that have shown some genetic resistance that we could use and start replanting? I don't know about the research. I don't know if you know, Anthony.
actually, there's in my connaissance and my knowledge, there is no ash tree which has been resistant. There are some species that show some resistance to EB, such as the blue ash, for instance. And we know that you know, the Asiatic ash are resistant, like Manchurian ash, for instance. So they are trying to understand the resistance of ash, you know, in order to produce a new variety of ash. There's an hybrid which has been made between black ash and Manchurian ash, which called Northern Treasure ash, I guess. It's like a variety, which is more resistant to AB. But by now, they only had maybe a few ash that were showing some resistance, but eventually were dying from EAB. So they probably have something, but we're not close from having an ash tree fully resistant to EAB. So there's a lot of work to be done in order to select the gene which are associated with EAB resistance. And eventually we're going to cross those tree which has been showing resistance on different level to eventually produce a new species of ash, a new variety, a new genetic variety of ash, which could be resistant. But the Americans are pretty advanced on that. They identify exactly the molecule which give the resistance to ash, and eventually what they don't understand is that the North American ash, it's like they don't react to EB attack. Actually, it's like they have actually the same chemical defense, but they don't express them at the right moment to avoid EB from damaging their tissues.
Thank you. Do we have another question from a student or postdoc?
It was a hot day.
Is Peter and his group still there? I don't see them.
He's a black tile.
Oh, they
There he
moved
is.
indoors.
Yeah,
Oh,
too hot
they were
outside.
too hot.
Yeah, so, well, too hot. We got a rain shower, so we had
Cooling
to
off.
move inside.
Well, you miss the most important thing.
No, we only missed about 2 minutes of the presentation. Or do you mean we missed the rain?
Oh no, Matt's question. That's what you missed, maybe.
Oh, we heard it.
All right.
I was going to say, I'm just going to add, and more Anthony, this is my experience because I have a student working on a UK Excelsior, Fraxinus Excelsior from the UK, because they, of course, the UK is concerned about if and when EAB arrives there. And we've found it quite resistant. It's quite interesting. And I guess I'm saying that because a number of communities, even in Windsor, there was Excelsior planted. So that's something that the city should look at, because I think there will be some resistance there. And the other thing that I think is, of course, there's resistant genes out there, and EAB is finding them. I'm sure it's selecting for whatever trees that will survive or will last a little longer are being selected. And I think some of the issue, certainly in Toronto, and I don't know about other municipalities, but back, I think you mentioned yesterday, Christian or Peter, about genetic monocultures. Like a lot of these ash that were planted in the 70s and 80s and 90s to replace the elms, they're genetic clones, like they were clonal material, so completely susceptible. And so I don't think our ash in cities are a very good measure of resistance. Like by definition, they're pretty susceptible, aside from being planted in cities, which makes them more stressed. So I think it's complex. And if you go and look at natural ash, ash and natural woodlands, you might start to see a little bit better survival. We're getting a hold of the Windsor data. There's still ash in Windsor, Ontario, ground zero. And so we're kind of interested to see, is that ash that made it through or ash that died, and this is regeneration coming back. So that's part of the exciting thing of looking at after the wave, after the destruction, what's left, and why is it still standing? Anyway, sorry, I'm just,
Interesting.
it's my favorite topic, so, you know.
Yeah. Christian, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to move from maybe the species to another one, the Asian longhorn, that I think in Toronto you've dealt with. I think in Montreal we haven't had it yet. And I think we've been able to control it. Is it just because it doesn't spread so quickly that we've been able to control it? And I'm wondering, my question was, what can we learn from the way we control the Asian longhorn so far, using so far? Or is there a lesson to be learned from other insects that we haven't learned from the emerald ash borer?
That's a question for Anthony, right?
Well, it could be for you, Sandy, or anybody. It was kind of an open question along the same line. How will we react better in the future? Because I think Françoise did mention it. There will be other insects or disease, and what is the best approach? Is the approach of Montreal the right one? I wanted to tease Antony a little bit because a few years before it hit Montreal, I remember my colleague Dan Nisha had contacted the city of Montreal, said we should start a project and plan. And I'm not sure if it was you or someone else, but somebody at the city said, well, maybe it won't hit Montreal. Well, it was kind of wishful thinking. Was it you?
No, it was not.
No, probably not. But anyway, what have we learned, and how can we do it better, or do we know now everything?
I guess, if I can say that, I would guess the Asian longhorn is a totally different problem because, of course, it was not spreading very fast. So it was an eradication program taken by the federal also. So, of course, the city has to make the job, but the federal were reimbursing the money spent. So, which make it a completely different problem. I would say the big thing about EAB is that cities were left alone with the problem and facing all the consequences of losing their trees and everything.
And why were you left alone? Is it because it was not a commercial species like maple, or even I will call it a identity species or social species like sugar maple, or all the maple? No.
I would say that the federal just, didn't, they calculated the cost it could be to work with all the cities, and they did have the budget to help cities, it was not the priority to help cities with that.
Right, right.
So probably in the future, maybe it could be different because, the Canadian Forest Services are trying now to get into urban forests since EAB. That's another opportunity which has been developed by EAB, So now they are trying to invest effort in urban forests. They recognize urban forests as the importance it has for at least human health and quality of life in Canada. So I would say without the EAB, we'll probably not be there right now.
But Benoit, I don't want to monopolize, but because the first case in Montreal was detected near the port, it's an indication that the weak link is probably movements of wood, probably, I think from how do we call it, pallets or even firewoods. And I think we should be much more strict about this and take measures that are much more strict. And my understanding is New Zealand has actually developed much more stricter rules than us. And this is maybe some prevention also could be an approach that we should develop.
I guess what I was going to add, well, just before COVID, I gave a talk in Toronto as Toronto's Tale of Two Beetles. And I think because Toronto was unique in having both ALHB and EAB, and some other cities have had it subsequently, but we were the first. And what I said there, and I think this is partly what you're talking about, Anthony, is we were expecting ALHB. The CFIA, the regulatory body, knew about it. It knew it was in Italy, it was in France, like the US, Chicago, New York City. So we kind of knew something about it. EAB took everyone by surprise, and we knew nothing. And in fact, partly what I'm praising Montreal, they benefited because they actually used what we had learned and applied it. And the same with Deb McCullough and Therese Poland and the Americans. So, it was a very different story. And then to your point, Anthony, CFIA just ran out of money and the ability to regulate, because EAB, it's political and financial, and it was just very difficult. It was clearly being moved by wood and people. It wasn't about the beetle, it was about us. Although once the beetle got to a place, it reproduced very quickly. So there was a whole bunch of, good reasons why they appear, if you're someone from the outside, you think they're the same problem. They're both wood-boring beetles. Why didn't we deal with it? But it's political and regulatory and financial. And EMB, the other thing is ALHB reproduces so slowly and stays in a tree, whereas EAB just spreads. And I think our susceptibility of our ash is another piece, because we had planted so much ash. But anyway, I just wanted to add to that, because you look at this and go, yeah, what did we learn from this? Is pay attention, be connected, like internationally. And I'm not sure about New Zealand, like CFIA has the regulatory borders and constraints between countries, but once you're inside Canada, I mean, we watched it jump, EAB from Windsor, just, in fact, it's out west, it's out east, and that's not on its own wings, that's with us.
Caitlin has mentioned in the chat that BC actually has laws preventing people to bring firewood from not just outside Canada from on the side, but even within Canada. Are there other provinces in Canada on the East Coast? I know that it's not recommended when you go to campgrounds. They say do not travel with your firewood, but are there actually regulatory laws that prevent it elsewhere?
They discourage you, but it's much like COVID passports. Like, the thing is who's checking up on it? Like, sure, don't take wood. Even the quarantines by CFIA, there's no fences. There's nobody stopping you going down the street. So it's the honor system and the ethics and the perspective that we're all in it together or everyone for themselves. So it's human, it's back to people problem, not so much an insect problem.
Here in Atlantic, I don't think we have any laws or regulations associated with the movement of firewood. We might do a better job of controlling the phytosanitation of transportation wood like pallets, which Christian brought up. The brown spruce longhorn beetle is alleged to have come into Canada in the port of Halifax in probably the late 70s or early 80s. And it wasn't identified correctly until about 15 years after it arrived. And we found it in abundance in Point Pleasant Park. And then the CFIA put a quarantine zone on Halifax County to not move wood out of the county. And they first, as CFIA seems to like to do, put a eradication order in place, a program. And as soon as that didn't work, it was a containment approach. And even that hasn't worked. So we've got brown spruce longhorn beetle in other parts of this province and in New Brunswick. But as it turns out, it hasn't yet become the kind of pandemic level or epidemic level of mortality in red spruces. But coming back to the pallets, how did we get emerald ash borer in Nova Scotia? The next closest detection was Edmundston, New Brunswick. And when it arrived here a year or two later, it arrived right beside the railroad track, the one railroad track that comes down into Halifax from Truro. And where that railroad track runs through a concentration of ash, urban ash, both in woodland settings and in both in streets and parks, that's where the emerald ash borer jumped off the train probably on infected pallet wood and established its presence here. But what's very interesting here in Halifax is that while we have probably a population of elm in the city streets that's at least 100 years old with the oldest trees and therefore not resistant stock, and probably, I don't know, 30% of our street tree population is elm. We lose no more than 1 or 2 trees per year to Dutch elm disease, which is very different than towns north of here and up in the Annapolis Valley, which have lost almost their entire elm populations like Truro did to Dutch elm disease. Now, fortunately, if we had lost elm here the way cities in Southern Ontario and perhaps Montreal lost elm, we might have made the same mistake and planted our streets full of ash. But we didn't need to do that because we didn't lose any elm. Of course, we have an overabundance of Norway maple, which is probably 40%. But we did a study recently to show that in the urban core of Halifax, the ash population amounts to no more than 3 or 4% of the total tree population. And so, you know, if we had a full mortality of ash in the city, yeah, some parks will have too many trees gone and a few streets that were loaded with ash. What we're far more concerned about, at least I am, when I consider the province, is the North Mountain of the Annapolis Valley, which if you look at the forest inventories is absolutely loaded with ash. And so if the emerald ash borer finds those rural stands, there could be pretty massive mortality across the woodlots of the North Mountain. The one final thing I wanted to say was about both the beech bark disease, and which is old, and hemlock woolly adelgid, which is new. And so beech bark disease also came on infected wood, but it was live wood because it was seedlings from the UK brought to our public gardens downtown Halifax that had the right bugs on the trees. Only a couple of them, and allegedly that's how we got beech bark disease in North America. And I know it's reached at least the shores of Georgian Bay, where I don't know how much the damage is, but we have a hard time finding an uninfected native beech tree across this entire province. Then the hemlock woolly adelgid came into the western end of the province and is now nicely established in Ketjumkujik National Park, and hemlock stands down there And the proposition is that it came here from Maine on birds that were not phytosanitized before they left Maine. And so, you know, we have all kinds of vectors for nasty things to move around the world. And most of the time it's humans that are part of it.
Thanks, Peter. Do we have anyone else who have a question for Anthony or has a comment? Sandy, don't forget to put your mic back on.
I know that. Thank you. Anthony, the question, because I was impressed because you pay to plant trees on private land. I mean, Toronto's finally got there, but that was such a huge hurdle to get the city to spend money on the private landowner. Was that a challenge for you guys, or is there any, who actually pays? Is it the city that pays for it?
Actually, it's only for the ash replacement by now.
Right.
But, we're trying eventually to expand that to, because the thing is, the city canopy, the public land canopy cover is better than the private one.
Right.
So we have a lot of place to increase our forest on private land, but less on public. We're already doing the job on public, so the politics knows that. We've been raising awareness about that too. So that probably is one explanation that make it easier for us to get money to have subsidy program to plant on private properties.
And it's a key part, when back to Peter's point here, is, you know, the only solution to these problems is to keep diversity in our urban forests. Like, so by planting on private land, and we saw a bit now in Toronto, but you get to make recommendations so that we're not just putting ashes or elms or whatever. Our cities are more resilient.
Exactly. But what we'd love to have is an inventory, a complete inventory of what we have on private land.
Yep.
But it's pretty costly.
Well, we're doing, and I would say in Toronto, like we have neighborhoods, because we have what they call these resident associations. So they've self-defined, and you probably do in Montreal as well, but they're the ones that have raised money locally to survey backyards, like the private land. Like the city has to work in partnership, and it's hard to coordinate that. That's what's really impressive with you guys in Montreal, because you've been able to coordinate. It's not, you're on an island, but it's not just Montreal. Like you had to really coordinate. That was one of the, I always thought was a challenge, and you guys seem to have done it really well. Yeah,
it was. But we are the biggest city on the island, and most city, the other city are a city that has money, so maybe it's easier for them to follow us.
Maybe a quick question for you, Anthony. In those replacement of ash programs that you have, are you the ones contacting the owners of the private land to suggest to replace the elm with it? Or is it the other way around, where it's the owners that have dead trees that are contacting you to have the tree replaced or whatnot?
Actually, once they remove their tree, they can apply for a subsidy. And they have two choices for replacing the tree, which is a condition to get the subsidy. So they can replace it themselves, or they can put their name on a list to get a free replacement. And we give like a big subsidy to an organization which is called Sauverdi, that make the plantation on private property. So they do everything. They call the citizen. They offer like 3 choices of 3. To get at least people agreement, because people are always scared of, will I be able to choose the tree that they will be planting on my property? We said, yes, you can have 3 choices. We're going to propose you 3 choices, and you're going to make your choice among those. And after which they plan the execution of the plantation and everything.
And did you get an overwhelming response that you weren't able to fournir à la demande? You weren't able to respond to every order, or was it like?
It's already the case. It's already the case. There's a long list, and we have to answer the long time it takes to plant the tree, because we have a lot of people that ask for trees. So we have, I would say, probably 1 year waiting for the longest now, because the organization that makes the plantation has limited resources. So.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Christian?
Yeah, a question about the program of using the ash wood to produce something useful. We've talked a bit about it. Is it something, I don't know how to say it, is it something that makes money or costs money, or is it made just to, I don't want to just to say feel good about a bad thing, but I'm just wondering about it. I mean, does the city make money, or does it cost money, or does it make sense even in terms of carbon? Is there a calculation that I've done that to do this is actually good for the carbon balance or not? I'm just wondering.
As for the carbon balance, I would guess so, but for the money it takes, I would say probably yes. I'm not responsible for that specific project, but I would say that the city was paying company to make wood chip out is wood, and we're buying after those wood chip to the company that were producing them. So we're paying to make the wood chip, and we're paying to get the wood chip to use them. So I would say it was kind of a nonsense, and that's why we're thinking about having our own facility to create value out of the wood which is removed from
and to make the timber or to make some kind of finish wood out of it. How did you do this? Was it given up to some private companies? The wood was given up or sold, or?
Yeah, I don't know to say it in English, but it was given to organization that make like social reinsertion.
All right.
They are making like furniture with the wood and everything, and we have a contract with them. They can keep a part of the wood for their own needs, and the city kept the other part. So they are making plank freely for us. They are making furniture, and they give us the one part of it, and they keep the other for their own business.
Good, thank you.
So I wonder, being mindful of the time, Christian, if you could close the guest speaker session, and then we'll talk about after the break.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for your question. Thank you, Antony, for the great
Thank you very much.
talk and overview. It was a very good, yeah. And I like to remind you that this is part of a CREATE program from NSERC, and that a lot of these students will be actually looking for places to go and do some training, internship. So if you have projects, questions that you think our students can help, please contact me or contact us. We'll be happy to create the linkage.